Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Joe Salustio, let me say my name again one more time. I can't even get that right. Joe Salustio, that is my name. I am your host of the EdUp Experience. I've been doing this for quite a while. If you've been listening, you know that I am definitely not perfect. I make mistakes. We keep them all in. We don't edit them out. We are real people. If you get a clean podcast, sometimes it's nice to listen to, but you just wonder, like, if these people make mistakes. I can assure you, we like to make mistakes here at the EdUp Experience. Speaking of mistakes, I have not made one by bringing in my amazing guest co-host today. Her second time being a guest co-host. She specifically asked for a grandiose intro, which I don't do. I mean, she was like, introduce me the right way. Here's the words I need you to say. And instead, I'm going to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, Dr. Emily Barnes.
Yay!
Oh,
The crowd goes wild.
Yay!
She's provost at Cleary University. Actually, you didn't give me any words to say, but, you know, I wanted to do a proper intro of you, Emily.
yeah. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to drag you kicking and screaming here to the podcast microphone today. I really appreciate you.
Yay!
Well, you know, every podcast with you, it's kind of like a dog year. Every podcast is really like doing 7.
Yes, is that true? Yikes! Well, you're fitting right in, Emily. Right away. I'm excited about our guest today.
Me too.
As you know, Emily, because you're dealing with things now at Cleary, the world is, I think, embraced more than ever online learning. And in many ways, and I know you're going through this in your institution, you're helping a transition moving from what was traditionally on ground to a more online focused campus. Talk to me about that a little bit before we bring in our guest.
Well, Cleary's they've had online classes for obviously a long time, but where we are evolving right now is just ultimate flexibility. So we've been on ground, but we're also online. We had a really quick move during COVID because we had already moved the majority of courses to at least some online component in some way, but also just the majority of our programs are offered in an online capacity. So where we are now is with trying to provide the needs of all of our students and the services within those courses for all of our students, and then make sure that those services are offered virtually for students who are strictly online, and then those who just need the flexibility. So a little bit across the board there, but we're just revving up our flexibility and meeting the needs of everybody.
Not unlike many universities today, trying to bring that flexibility in. And so there are resources out there for you if you don't know. And we've brought you an incredible resource today in our guest. And here she comes. Let me make sure that I have the right intro for her because she deserves it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jennifer Mathis. She is CEO of the Online Learning Consortium. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
I know you're getting applause every time you walk into a room, but I just wanted to keep it going.
No, not really, but that's okay.
Well, let's level set for us. For those people, many of us that have been in an online learning space for years have heard of the Online Learning Consortium, but let's assume there's somebody here that has not heard of the OLC. What do you do and how do you do it? We'll start there.
What do we do? Let me say, what don't we do? We are actually a nonprofit. We are a self-sustaining organization, and what we do is really work with the whole institutional strategy around online blended and digital learning. So it's about the networking, the conferences, events, professional development, all of these pieces that the organization does in supporting our members and really the whole academic community.
Okay, so let's act as if somebody's really confused right now and they say, okay, she said online, she said digital, she said blended. What are the differences, or are they all the same thing, or what separates them apart, and how do I define those?
You know, they are different. A lot of times you hear digital used to describe blended and online learning, but digital really encompasses so much more because, you know, we do talk about digital learning when you're talking about your courses that are enhanced with online blended learning or even just educational technology. So that word tends to be kind of an all-encompassing words in many cases. Online learning is really when you're talking about a course that is taught fully online. It's designed intentionally to be a fully online and effective course. And then blended learning is when you still have those face-to-face components to it. One thing I'll add there too is we don't necessarily talk about remote learning, which is what happened during the pandemic, but this is my soapbox, so I want to make sure I jump on it when I get a chance.
Do it.
Remote learning is often conflated with online learning. They're not the same. Remote learning is what happened during the pandemic when we saw that transition quickly, in many cases overnight, to being able to offer courses via Zoom or 100% distance, in some variation of that. And it was really just taking what was happening in the face-to-face classroom and just plopping it into a virtual environment. But it really didn't have any design components that you would see in a traditionally prepared and quality online course. So I want to make sure that difference is definitely distinguished.
It's funny because we had a guest, and I cannot remember who it was, but I was like, yes, that's it. He said it was emergency response response remote learning.
Yes.
And I said, now you put the word emergency in front of it, and that's exactly what it was. It was an emergency response to like a crisis, and you put it in an emergency response team, and you went online, you plopped it in there. And then people went, well, online learning stinks. And you go, it's not. It's emergency response remote learning. And I was like, yes, that's a great way to say it, that it's an emergency response. What do you think of that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's exactly what it was. And what I saw occurring during that time frame, definitely you were just seeing people trying to figure out the tools and just get the knowledge in front of the students in some way or another, but definitely would say it's emergency response remote learning, because there was no intentional design in anything that happened, for that period.
Yeah, it almost kind of gave online learning a bad name. It's like we had to go, wait a second, this is not what this is.
Exactly.
What about you, Emily? You heard that before?
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's also a lot of conversation or confusion, I would say, an unnecessary confusion between asynchronous and synchronous. So what you're describing, when you think about online courses, well, I think a major, huge point that's missed is that online courses have a unique design. And there's an expertise around how that course meets the needs of the learner and what modality, also with the discipline and the goals of the course and all these different things. And that can be missed. It's not as easy as just throwing up the camera and saying, we're going to meet on Zoom. Right. So then I think, it's one of those things where you don't hear asynchronous and synchronous as much, but there's still some confusing points there. And I think that obviously this lady knows a lot about that.
Actually, I'm glad you brought in asynchronous and synchronous, because I think that is a very important point. And there is some confusion, I know, with some people who think about online as well, thinking that this is all the anytime, anywhere learning. How the terminology that we used at the early days of online learning, because there was the belief that this was all asynchronous learning, and it's really not. I mean, it can be. But, we also have online where there is synchronous learning that is occurring. But again, it all comes back to that intentional design to make a quality and effective classroom for the students.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So do you think that just to steal Joe's lifetime, I wonder about first gen students. There's obviously risk factors or things that, I think colleges worry about with having first gen students who have never been online, but they need to be fully online because they're adults and they have demanding needs and that kind of thing. But many of them may have had their first exposure to what online, that's my quotes. You can't see that. No one can see that, but online classes look like and are like through watching their children do remote learning in K-12. So they might think this is what it's going to be like if I take online courses. So what's the message to people who now that's their only exposure and their only sight on what it's like to be an online student.
Wrong.
Yeah, good answer. And honestly, that was a thought I had as well. Even the K through 12 students who experience that, when they go on to a university, if that's the only exposure they had, that's what they're going to be thinking online learning is at a university, and it's not. I have been trying to educate even at the K through 12 level during the pandemic. OLC tried to provide some resources on what online learning is. We tried to reach as many people as we could throughout the education spectrum during that period, because that was a real concern that what our students in K-12 are experiencing, is not a quality experience. And I think it kind of goes back to, if there are students who are seeing, or first gen students who are seeing these students of their children, in these quote unquote, those are my air quotes, online courses for the K through 12 and thinking that's what they're going to experience. That scares me a little bit, because I know it's not, again, meeting those quality standards that we set, and it's not using any of the best practices that we have been touting for a long time need to be in a true online course. You can reach first generation students in online learning. Because there are some fears about, higher risk students and how they will perform in online learning. In reality, it all comes down to the design of the course, the instructor who's teaching it, and are they prepared to teach the course? There are factors like that, and including, does the institution have support structures in place for these students who are taking online? And those students, they can be as successful in an online course as they would be in a face-to-face course. I have a personal experience that I share, and since my son won't listen to this, I can say this online. But one of my kids, I actually am the mother of 5 children, and one of my children was someone who didn't do well in school. He struggled. Math was his absolute worst subject, and he just, was horrible in any math class he took, and he had to take a remedial math class at the university he went to. Failed the face-to-face course, so he had to retake it, and the only option they had was online. I was a little nervous. And here I am, this person who works in online learning. I know about online learning, but I was nervous. He gets into an online course, and he did better and performed better than he did on site. And I said, well, what was different here? He said, you know what? I actually had a teacher who spent time with me. When I was in the classroom, that teacher that I had wasn't spending time with me. I was just in the classroom in front of her doing my homework, doing the test, and I failed. In this online environment, she had office hours set up. She had all these things set up so that I could, be successful. And she helped me and coached me. And I think that's the difference, is you really got to have support for students in those environments.
Yeah, I think that.
Well, let me jump in right there, Emily, because this happened to me recently, where I was in a discussion with someone, and we were having a discussion. I think I already said that word, but we're having a discussion about quality of online learning. And in this discussion, it was, it's a significantly reduced product. It's not as effective as in person. It's, should it even be priced the same because it's reduced? And everything I hear is that it's just not their same experience, blah, blah. What do you say to people who bring that perspective? Because you hear it a lot still. I mean, even still. So take a moment, soapbox.
Fire at will.
I will. So how long has it been since the no significant difference research, right? I mean, we've been over this for 20 years, over and over and over again, and we still keep getting research on the same thing that just keeps proving that online learning, when it's done right, is students will actually perform the same as or better than in person. Again, it comes down to how that classroom was designed. So when I hear people say that it's not the same as, it's not as good as, what I'm hearing is they probably haven't created online learning that actually implements the best practices that we've been talking about, right? They haven't done those things to create a quality environment where students can be successful. It's like, if you don't set up the classroom right for your students and don't give them all the information they need and the tools they need to be successful, whether it's face-to-face or online, they're not going to do well. So when you talk about the cost, because that's one of those things I hear from people a lot, including students who think, well, we're not paying for buildings, so this should be less expensive, right? And my answer is actually no. Yeah, no, that's actually not true, because when you do online learning right, there are some additional costs that you have to include, and it may be courseware, it may be support services that are provided for students. I mean, there are additional costs that are involved, and in some cases, online learning could end up costing slightly more than what you do in person because of all those additional tools and resources that you provide to students.
And they're evolving tools too. It's not like you just go,
Yes.
here's this class and like here's the book. It's what technology comes next. 6 weeks from now, how are the students going to change in the way that they learn? It used to be better, and you hear people go, it was better to go to the store. I always will go to a store. I'll never order things online. I mean, who orders things online? I mean,
right.
And then you get to the point where, does anybody even go to the store anymore? I mean, it's tough to embrace change, which is why I think COVID pushed us in the direction of embracing change to some degree. You have so many resources at OLC. You have the learning journal, the online learning journal. You have guides, conferences. There's a lot of rich information. Did you just see just an influx of people accessing and wanting more? And is that continuing? Is there a tail on that, or is it stopping now because things are going back to whatever normal looks like?
So it hasn't stopped yet. I think what this pandemic did is it made a lot of people realize that they need to start learning more about online learning to make sure that they're doing the right things and able to do it in the right way. So we have seen continued requests for more resources. We have it's an example of blended learning playbook, and we have some additional resources around blended learning, very popular right now, because people are looking at blended learning as being a way to incorporate the best of both worlds. They can get that online learning, they've got the in-person, and hey, if a national disaster or crisis or something happens again, they have a way they can switch the learning so they're not caught off guard again. So we are seeing some of that. Professional development, more institutions are investing in their faculty and staff right now to get them that training they need. When the pandemic first hit, we had a lot of people coming to us and saying, okay, we have our own teaching and learning center, but we cannot scale up for the number of people who need training. Can you help us? And we did. And that has continued. We still are seeing people who come in and say, okay, we got a few people done in the early stages. We got to do more now. So again, professional development has been huge. And then the conferences, our virtual conference starts next week for Innovate. And then we're actually going to be in person in the Dallas, Texas area in a couple of weeks as well as part of that. And there again, we're seeing people come to us about, I want to learn, I want to know what those best practices are, what people are seeing. And it's, getting people together for building those skills. So I actually was really, surprised during the pandemic at just how much people were looking for, I shouldn't say how much they were looking for resources, because we knew that was going to happen, but just how much people engaged with the resources, because it was, it was not just in the US, it was globally where people were trying to get the information they needed in a timely manner to be able to implement and run their programs.
Incredible.
Well said, Emily.
Yes. Your voice got deeper, Emily.
Yeah, I know I'm taking a lot of time. Do you want me to keep jumping in, Emily, or you want me to just get out of the way here?
No, you're fine. I think I really do. I have some, I want to keep going. So my question is for you is that I'm sure that you, on occasion, you speak to, I'm making a joke, but you probably speak to a lot of people in higher education, obviously seeking services from the Online Learning Consortium. So if I give you a phone call as a provost of Clear University, what type of assistance does OLC provide as far as let's say I'm not, I'm not at all like just coming out of the gate with trying to figure it out, but I'm going, help me solve my problems.
Mhm. So I think that we usually will dig to see what those problems are, right? To figure out, well, where exactly do you need help? But institutions have come to us for assistance with their online learning strategy, for implementation of that strategy, which may include some instructional design work and helping them to build out some online curriculum, or to prepare some of that work. They've come to us for, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the quality scorecards that we offer, but we have the course design review scorecard, and we have the online scorecard for the quality program. So it's that whole program, as well as for blended learning. And we do work with institutions on implementing the scorecards, and actually, helping them with the reviews, and even doing this endorsement process after, they've gone through a third-party review. So we can do all of those pieces. We do, talk to faculty. So we go out there as, experts, and give presentations at, the faculty development day at the beginning of a semester. I mean, you name it, and, we're probably doing it, and we're involved in, a number of different projects similar to this. We did some work with the Saudi Arabia and their National E-Learning Center. So we do this globally. And we work with ministries of education as well. But what we did with the Saudi Arabia is to do some research. And we've published some reports on, education and what's happening in online learning or remote learning there, so that they can better prepare for the future. And those are reports that, we make available. So they're out there in the public space. So we do research as part of the services that we provide. So like I said, there's a lot of different things that we do, but we always start with this conversation with the person and say, okay, let's understand what it is that you want to get done. What are you trying to achieve? So we can figure out and tailor, those services and the consulting for you. Again, professional development is another big thing. Sometimes it's as simple as we already offer workshops that people want to take, but they have to send 1,000 people through it. How do we do that? Or they want something customized specifically for their institution. So.
Hey, everybody, head over to www.edupexperience.com, our website, where you're going to find all of the episodes that we've recorded categorized so that you can ensure that you're spending your time listening to the podcasts that are most important to you. You're going to see the reviews of our podcasts, the shows in our network, our partners, and a section on starter episodes. If you're new to the EdUp experience, listen to those starter episodes and get a feel for how the podcast has evolved over time and our impact in the world. www.edupexperience.com. I feel like this is the best time in the episode to have what I like to call Higher Ed Word Association with your contestants today, Dr. Jennifer Mathis of the Online Learning Consortium and Dr. Emily Barnes of Clear University. Are you guys ready for this?
No.
Does this get you ready?
Ready.
Closest it's going to be.
No money. All right, so this is the part of the episode we like to lighten it up. I'm going to give you guys a higher ed phrase or word, and you're going to give me the first set of words or phrases that come to your mind. You can elaborate on why. Just randomly, I pulled these in advance based on my guest, and my co-host has to go along with it, and they just have to make something up here. Okay, so we're going to go to Jennifer first.
Okay.
So here we go. Instructional design.
Oh, that to me means so much, because instructional designers I'm probably going to I'm going to go way beyond what you're asking here. But instructional design.
Academic word association, so there's no limit to explanation here.
Oh, good. I get to be very academic in my response. Instructional designers do so much in terms of preparing a course to be effective in an online or blended or digital environment, right? So, universal design for learning, and looking at accessibility as a part of that. They I don't even know where to start because again, they do so much. I'm like tripping over my words, thinking about, everything is about creating an effective classroom environment and what they do. And they go to, they get degrees in this, and it's so impressive. I'm just so in awe of those people. I just tripped over that answer. I told you I was terrible at this.
No, it was actually really good. And Emily has to follow that up with, here's your instructional design, Emily.
MacGyver.
Oh,
MacGyver.
So that's how you're supposed to do it. Okay, I'm doing that next time.
No, you did great.
Okay, you got to do whatever way you want to do it, because it can't be just like the shortest word association ever. But
I like that.
But I like that a lot too, because it's like the gum wrapper and the toothpick and the all of a sudden you come out with a lockpick, right? And it's something, you put all these parts together and come out with something amazing. I like that.
Right.
Oh wait, ask me one more time. Same question.
She got better one.
Instructional design.
A-team. One more time.
Instructional design.
Ghostbusters.
I like it.
Good call. They do everything. Sorry. I love instructional designers too. I used to be.
Go. Number two. Competency-based education. Jennifer.
Oh, competency-based education. This is all about, education isn't just taking a test and we verified that you are smart. This is, you're able to show that you are competent and have the competencies for a skill. I want to hear your one-word answers to this because they are way better and you get time to think through it.
Dr. Emily Burns. CBE.
Ooh, short as possible. I'll do my short as possible. I equate it to the one-room schoolhouse approach that has been effective since, forever. But that's my
expand.
Education.
You got to expand on that.
Yeah. So competency-based education is really about honoring the skill and that skill is acquired, through life, through work, through lessons, through travel, through engagement with different populations, with just absorbing it through the world. So when students have, with CBE, competency-based education, when students have acquired these experiences that have then created these competencies through a variety of indicators in higher ed that we use to gauge whether or not they actually have the competency, there's no reason to have that student sit in a classroom and or go through repeated, like gathering more knowledge of something that they have mastered. So I call it the one-room schoolhouse method because that environment that was a way of the past created time for students who had mastered one subject to move to the next one because they were able to choose and they could learn from older students or acquire more knowledge in one area while taking time to continue learning this area. And it was so custom and so personal. And that's my relatability to something that was very, very old at one point that still has relativity today, even in the online environment, because there's ways to do that great there too.
I love the academic coming out of you there on that one, Emily. It's just pouring out word after word. I love it. Here we go. Next one. We're going to go to you first, Emily, on this one. Student consumer.
Student consumer. You mean students as a consumer?
I'm giving you the words and you have to react. Student consumer.
Ooh. Gosh, student consumer. A student as a consumer. Or the student is the audience. Still getting there. The student is the consumer. I'll just say that but it's not just education. The university offers a variety of things. Some are services, some are experiences, some are, it may become in the form of information, but either way, of course, I would be remiss to say that it's not a consumer situation because students have a choice and they are exchanging they're exchanging their resources to receive something. So they are a student consumer. That's my answer.
Jennifer, student consumer.
So I always look at this back from my days in academic leadership, where student as consumer, students often, especially adult students, see their place in higher ed a little bit different. They see themselves as a consumer of these services, and so often would have expectations on what was provided for them. And they are definitely the ones who will be first to speak up when they feel like they're not being treated fairly, right? So in my perspective, that students as consumer, for some students that meant consumers always right? So they would always come in and, demand a grade or demand this because they're paying for it. And so there was that education piece of, yes, you're paying for an education, that's what we're providing you, but it doesn't mean you get, a certain grade. So I think there's a lot of layers to that, but we as educators have to remember that students are paying for services. They are paying for an education, and we have to make sure that we are providing them the highest quality education that's going to help them achieve their goals.
Okay, last one. I could keep going. I feel like I
All
could do
day.
a whole podcast episode with just 3 words and like a couple of guests, and we just crush it. All right, last one. Emily, we'll go to you. AI/VR.
So AI and VR. So to me, that is, I believe if that was scalable for the commonplace university, that would significantly enhance educational offerings, especially ones that are not troublesome, but have more challenges to be offered in the remote setting and or just online. But having, distance online education where, and it could be as simple as learning knife skills in a culinary environment versus, anatomy, surgery, medical techniques, you name it, things that are traditionally more difficult to do online. I think it's a huge access point if we can make that scalable and affordable across higher ed.
Jennifer, AI/VR.
Star Trek. There you go. That's mine. So Star Trek 2009 movie. Yeah, Star Trek, the 2009 movie. Spock at an early age, is learning, and he's in this little pod where you see the different equations and stuff in front of him, and that's what I keep thinking, that someday in the future we're going to be like that, where students are interacting with technology to learn what they need to learn, that adapts to them, that is able to give them exactly what they need. So more personalized learning. So I think there's so much potential for this. It's just, not scalable yet. It's not ready for us to easily implement in an educational setting.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of Higher Ed Word Association with Emily and Jennifer. How do you guys like that? You like Higher Ed Word Association? Emily, I know you this is your second time, I think, doing it.
It's a lot of fun.
You don't like it. You don't like it, which means every single time you come on now as a co-host, we're doing it.
Okay.
Jennifer, how did you enjoy Higher Ed Word Association?
Oh, it was good. It was interesting.
Well, if I get interesting, then I'm winning in a higher ed podcast, I feel like, right?
I don't know, because if you were to ask my kids, when I say that word, what that means, it'd be different. So
No, sir.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. Emily, you want to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was listening to the wisdom that you were dropping, even during the, the responses to the higher ed words. And, you really got stuck on instructional designers. That's where I saw a lot of passion come out of you. And I really like that. I like how you discussed these individuals that are they're just, creating power and accessibility. You also mentioned something very interesting. You said universal design and accessibility. And I'm going to tell you this week, I was talking to someone who will not be named in a situation that might not be referenced about making more scalable transition to online learning. And it was expressed that this was a little bit too much emphasis on accessibility, and it was holding things up. And I said, oh,
Yikes!
Yes, yikes. So talk to me about universal design, talk to me about accessibility, talk to me about ADA, and why that is like so important right now.
Yes. So first of all, I'm not an expert in these areas, but I know enough to have a conversation about it. Universal design for learning really, it takes into consideration that not all learners are the same, and we have to be able to address, different needs of the students who are coming to us. Accessibility, ADA, oh, so important, because again, it comes down to we're addressing the needs of students, and we can't do what I've seen happen in higher education many times is we're just going to create this, and we're going to think about the normal, I'm using air quotes, the normal student, and just set it up that way so that we don't have to spend all this extra money thinking about accessibility or ADA concerns. But they're hoping that nobody comes along that needs additional help, right? And that's kind of a backwards way, I think, of doing it, because really there are students who may benefit from the work that you put into a course where you're addressing accessibility or ADA needs that you don't recognize right away, or because it's not an obvious need that they have. So I think there's that piece of it, but there's a legal aspect to this, right? Especially when you're talking about ADA. Many institutions have faced lawsuits from various entities that have come to them and said, we're doing this lawsuit because we want to bring to your attention that you are not you do not have something that somebody with these needs is able to interact with your website or whatever. So there is that piece of it. And I actually have been a part of an organization where they were going through that lawsuit, and the organization that came to them to say, hey, you're not meeting these needs, didn't do it in a negative way per se. Yes, they filed a lawsuit, but they said, we want you to address these concerns. That's all we want. We don't want to sue you. We're not looking for $1 million from you. Fix it so that people can interact with and engage with your organization. And that's not an OLC thing, just so you know, just to be clear, that did not happen to OLC, but it's happened to others. But it makes us realize that we have to be thinking about those things at all times, because somebody should not have to come to you and say, make this work for me. You should be already setting things up so that when these students come to you, you've already got things in place so that they can interact and engage with the content, and not wait 6 months until you get your act together and can make it happen for them.
Right. And I think that where I think the big message is missed at times is that, having universal design and or being cognizant of universal design, and also providing that ultimate accessibility when it comes to online learning, that is a huge part of being inclusive. It's a huge part of DEI because you may not be, there's so many people who are affected by, they might have photosensitivity, light sensitivity. They may need something read. They may need to read. They may need to see. They may need to be able to control that. And if they are using devices, for instance, where they, are trying to access something that's written and that they're using across different devices, being cognizant of how many different types of e-readers are there, and what is someone using to be able to, use their phone or to take something that's written and then, take it with them where they go, even if they're just trying to have education on the go or manage their time, or if they're trying to truly be able to actually read it, having that part of the design, critical. Absolutely critical. And it enhances learning experience because it gives flexibility for all people to learn how they learn best. And that is another big win for online learning. Can I get a clap? Can you get like a yay online learning? Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
But universal design is not a waste of time. It is definitely not a waste of $1 either. And that for higher education institutions, from my perspective, that's a huge marketability, because you're saying no matter how you learn, where you learn, what devices you use to learn, or to enable yourself to learn better, we got you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And can I just add to one thing that you started off with was that, talking about instructional designers. So I just want to add one piece there. They really are the unsung heroes that people usually forget about them, because you're looking at the faculty who are teaching the class, but those instructional designers behind the scenes doing so much work to make sure that that class is operational.
That's right. And I think you made another great point, is that, where I've had to spread the message in my career is that it's not unrealistic at all, but to expect a faculty member who has not spent 6 years of education learning how to master instructional design, they are not necessarily, some of them do an excellent job. I'm not saying that at all, but there are many faculty just with this assumption that any faculty is going to be able to throw up this online class, like nobody's business, right? When their subject matter expertise is in their discipline.
Come on.
Right. And it's a specialized thing. It's a specialized thing. And that's a unique training set. And that's where I think, from my perspective as a provost, man, I was just looking at your catalog. Your organization has tons of training for faculty and administrators, and gosh, just about anybody who needs to excel in this space. But where do you think the biggest need is as far as helping faculty work with instructional designers, or helping people understand the role of instructional designers, or how that can impact online learning overall?
So I do think, faculty understanding how to work with instructional designers is definitely important. And I think that in some cases you may have instructional designers who are able to help guide the faculty, right? And I think that's a skill on both sides that is needed, so they know how to work together. Because I've seen a lot of different scenarios where faculty either want to do it themselves but don't know what they're doing. They want an instructional designer to do it, and they just dump everything and say, "Here you go put my course together and make it happen," right? Or there is that happy medium that's in there where they're able to work together, and I think that's a real skill that instructional designers need to learn how to talk to faculty, to pull out of them what they need. Faculty need to respect and be able to work with the instructional designers to create the course that's going to work for what they're trying to teach. So I think there's a little bit of both that's needed in there. Not sure I quite answered your question there. Kind of went off on a tangent, but so
I'd
yeah.
say you did. Did a pretty good job. Well, there's a lot to talk about here. I will tell you guys that this is it sounds like this is a topic near and dear to all of our hearts. So we would have to do a part 2, and maybe you can come back and do a part 2 with us, Jennifer, at some point. We talk about online learning, how we evolve. But we do like to end our episodes with the same 2 questions to every single guest. So you get them now. Number 1, what did we not say about OLC? Things that are happening, events coming up, talks you're giving, any plug you want to give, website, whatever you want to give. So take your time. And then secondly, what do you see as the future of a higher education?
Okay. So first of all, what did we not talk about? You know what I want to emphasize, this is my chance for a plug. I'm going to emphasize we have our conference coming up here. And we're hoping to see a lot of people come out in person in Texas. I don't know how many people are comfortable with traveling. I've been doing some traveling and have been good with it, but I know not everybody's there. And if they can't come in person, we want to see them online next week for the virtual part of the event. And if all else fails, come to Accelerate in the fall. We're in Walt Disney World again, Swan and Dolphin in November. Great time to be in Florida. So really hoping to see a lot of people there. That's my plug. So what do I see for the future of higher education? I think higher education is going to continue to evolve in many areas. I think there are going to be those institutions that are still going to be behind the scenes behind the 8 ball, I guess I should say, because they don't want to embrace any type of online blended or digital learning, and they're going to struggle over time. But I think the ones that embrace the digital learning options that are available to them are going to continue to see progress and growth. They're also going to be the ones who are better prepared when we get hit with a pandemic in the future, or we get hit with a natural disaster. They're the ones who are going to be able to make those quick adjustments and be able to offer quality courses for their students, which, by the way, is another important thing. Students aren't going to continue to accept emergency remote online or remote learning, right? Emergency response remote learning. Let me get that right. They're not going to continue to accept that. Students are going to say, enough. You've had time. You've had 2 years now, and you can't get your act together and actually give me a quality class. This is not good. So institutions that are want to stay ahead of the curve are going to get their faculty trained. They're going to hire the instructional designers and start developing courses that can be offered in multiple duality or modalities so that they're better prepared for what the future holds.
One way you can stay ahead of the curve is to visit the Online Learning Consortium at onlinelearningconsortium.org. You can find all of the materials that Jennifer and team have put together. Free subscription. There's stuff you could get for free. There's things you could download. There's things you could pay. Basically, it's a one-stop shop for all your on-learning needs. I would suggest you go there. I do all the time. And I know many, many people that do. And we appreciate everything that you do, Jennifer. But before I outro you, I have to say, I'm so happy that Dr. Emily Barnes is coming back to co-host with me. She, of course, is provost at Cleary University.
Yay!
I'm going to try to find something better than that.
Yay!
Do you feel like it's a little underwhelming?
Yeah,
The yay?
it's a little bum. It's, you know, it makes me want to like curl up and cry a little.
All right. Dr. Emily Barnes.
Yeah!
Yeah, that's way better. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go. And of course, my guest today, Jennifer Mathis. Dr. Jennifer Mathis. She's CEO at the Online Learning Consortium.
Mhm.
Jennifer, did you have a good time on the EdUp Experience podcast?
I totally had a good time on the podcast. It was amazing, awesome, best experience of my life for a podcast.
Well,
Oh.
thank you. And we're going to quote you on that. Ladies and gentlemen, honored to have Jennifer here. Let me tell you something, guys. You've just EdUp'd.